Hello from Taiwan. So, I teased that this is the best self-help book I've read this year. No bad parts, an introduction to internal family systems. Today I just feel spontaneous, and I'm just going to talk about four key concepts of this book. And the reason is this framework, this thinking has been very deeply transformative to my life, and I'm only getting started with it, but I think this is the way through to any kind of self-improvement, growth, healing, suffering. So I think the world needs a lot of it now, whatever people are going through, right? Like just depression from news, anxiety, any kind of substance abuse, trauma, anything to do with the inner psyche. I think this book has something to tell you. So the first idea is that, contrary to classical psychology, the mind is not one entity. The mind is a collection of different parts. So a certain pessimistic view of the human mind that started from Freudian psychology stated that we have a conscious level, the ego, and maybe we have a superego even, the parts that rationally try to interact with morality and value systems. But we have the subconscious part, what Freud calls the id, that are innately sinful and selfish and destructive. Because our base is so sinful and destructive, the only way through is willpower. We need to control our impulses, we need to fix our negative thought patterns, we need to control our emotions, we need to transcend and become a better version of ourselves. The popular thinking can create some pressure. It can tell you that you're innately problematic, and the only way through is to overcome your inherent kind of desires and flaws, right? So the first idea of this book is that the mind is made of many different parts. It's an internal family. It's a committee, right? So if ever you've experienced any kind of conflict, any kind of dilemma, should I go out, meet friends tonight, or stay in and enjoy solitude? Those are your parts talking. If you ever have like unexplained physical symptoms when you're anxious, or certain mood swings that you can't explain, inner critic that can't stop overthinking, those are just parts of you, and those aren't your essence. The second idea is that, like this book says, none of the parts are bad. So whatever these parts have you do, whatever suffering, I think there's an earthquake now. I think I just witnessed an earthquake. That was crazy, because I know like earthquakes happen in Taiwan, but right in the middle of filming. Okay, so I was saying number two, none of the parts are bad. All of the parts have protective intentions. So whatever impulses or destructive capabilities these parts make you fall into, whatever negative patterns, it's out of the intention to protect you from pain. So why do your parts do these things? Parts themselves aren't the problem. The parts carry extreme beliefs, which Dick Schwartz calls burdens. So these are extreme beliefs established possibly early in your childhood or sometime in your experience, and force your parts to take on extreme roles. So there are three kinds of burdens. So the first is an exile. So these are the raw, abandoned selves, like feeling of shame and toxicity or neglect that might have been triggered by some adverse experience in childhood. So this exile is something you don't want to touch. It's an old part of you that's frozen in time. The second kind of burden is called a manager. So these are parts that evolved to stop you from ever reaching your exiles. So for example, when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're extremely stressed, instead of noticing the pain in your body, a manager part could analyze it. It could overthink. It could try to reason through. So that's a classic defense mechanism in Freud literature, intellectualization, right? It could also take on striving tendencies. So in order to make sure you don't ever feel like you're not enough, it could make you very driven, make you want to achieve and impress and do a lot so that you never feel like you're flawed, right? So the third kind of burden is a firefighter part. When an exile is triggered, when some part of you feels unlovable, you look for some kind of dopamine rush. You look for anything that makes you feel better. This is the firefighter part trying to come up and rescue you from the fire, right? So It could be substance abuse, behaviors that try to help you but actually end up harming you and becoming some kind of addiction over time. So none of these parts are bad. They're all designed to help you feel better, to prevent you from triggering this sense of overwhelming pain. Now the third idea, something comes to the rescue. Above all of these parts, there's a layer called the self. And the self is not a part. The self is your essence. It's an adult, calm, compassionate self underneath all the noise. So we mentioned this is like an internal family of different siblings that might fight for your attention. But the self is the adult. It's the head of the household, the head of the committee that knows what to do. And there are certain qualities that Schwartz describes that allows you to know when you're in self rather than in a part. And these qualities are 8 C's. I don't remember all the 8 C's, but it starts with curiosity. Like, you want to learn about your parts, you want to learn about the world. You're calm, you're compassionate, you're confident, and 4 other more. But the idea is, here you're unblending from your parts. You're separating a bit from your parts. And this takes a lot of practice, but it's also magically simple. You just go to this practice and you say, hey, part of me that's striving and wanting to achieve, or part of me that's sad and feeling like a pain in my chest. I hear you, I see you, you're there. Thank you for trying to protect me. Could you step back a bit and let me, the adult, loving and knowing self, get to know you from a distance? So in a sense, you're detaching from an activated part. You're creating some space, and in IFS terms, we call it unblending. You're unblending from a part that you were originally possibly blended with. And by talking to all of these parts, you're actually letting the self, which is a layer underneath, right, run the show. You're letting it talk to each of the parts in a compassionate manner. The parts might initially not talk back to self. They might feel pushed away, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice of inner dialogue in order for the parts to have this trust in the self. These 8 C's are when you know, like, you're actually currently ruled by self, and it's a certain kind of tingly, comfortable feeling in the body. So there are somatic signs when you're in self, and you know that you're unblended. And now for the last concept, healing. So in IFS terminology, healing is just self-leadership. It's just when you're running the show, yourself is running the show. This adult knowing self has reparented all the inner parts, is gradually gaining their trust through consistently loving them, checking in on them, and liberating these parts from these extreme roles and burdens. So the striving part, like the part that wants to create and perform, still is there. You want that. You don't want this part to be gone because it's contributed to so much of your success. But it now is doing so from a different motivation. It's not like feeling like it has to do it to prevent you from feeling unloved. And then parts that prevent you from getting close to people, for example. Through talking to them, you get them to gradually relax. The self actually is the leader, and the parts trust you to lead. So you're befriending your parts and letting them know that you'll be okay running the show. You're an adult now. You won't be stuck in like a perpetual state of pain. As you liberate these parts and you act with more self-energy, you're going to see yourself differently. You're going to have more peace and acceptance with whatever you're struggling with. You're going to carry more curiosity, calm, acceptance, and compassion. You're going to find more sense of purpose, because the more you're connected to your parts, the more you're connected to other people as a macroscopic collection of parts in a society. We won't go into too much detail about these practices of speaking to parts, but stay tuned, it'll come up in another video.